Secretary of the Gauteng Legislature. Advocate Maloka, thanks for your time. And according to Mafoko Security Patrol, the reason why these security guards haven't been paid is because the Gauteng Legislature hasn't paid the company. Is that true?
Let me firstly, greetings, Michelle, and compliments of the new year, and also to your viewers. Let me indicate that we can confirm that the legislature paid the invoice of Mafoko for October and November on the 5th of December. So it's not correct that Mafoko was not paid. Maybe let me explain why the two invoices were paid. The contract with the legislature, Mafoko and the legislature, ended on the 31st of September 2025. And after this contract, our supply chain processes were busy adjudicating the replacement tender. And as a result, we were delayed with that process. Then we extended the Mafoko contract for 3 months. And during that 3 months, immediately when we extended them, they came back to us around October to say that, look, we are happy with the 3 months extension. However, there's the new SIRA rates because we pay them in terms of the SIRA rates. Then the process was then to take this, the new counter offer to our supply chain process. And we had to process it through our bid committees. And it took at least a month to do that process. Then thereafter, it was approved and hence it was paid on the 5th of December. Now, on the 16th of December, when we closed on the 12th of December, actually, on the 16th of December, I was contacted to say that our security officers employed by Mafoko were not paid, and it got me worried because we paid them the two invoices of October and November on the 5th of December.
Okay, so if you paid October, November on the 5th of December, what happened to the December invoice? Because you said their contract ended at the end of September and it was extended for
Correct.
3 months. So that takes us to the end of
Correct.
December.
Correct.
So,
yes.
so where's
now what
the
happened
December
is that,
payment?
Yes, the December invoice is the one that is in dispute now.
Right.
What happened is that on the 5th of January, when I came back to the office, I got the December invoice from them. On the strength of the fact that we got information that they did not pay their workers in December, I immediately wrote a letter to the company to say that, look, we are not going to process your invoice because you have not paid your workers. In fact, we want you to do an undertaking that we have paid them, and once we have paid them, we'll process your invoice. Remember, there's history on this issue. There has been reports that Mafoko has been failing to pay its employees. On several occasions, this has been the situation. And we tried. We, in fact, went to an extent of putting a penalty in the addendum to our contract to say that in an event they fail to pay, we'll impose penalties, 10% penalties. So we, in fact, indicated in the letter to say that besides the fact that they did not pay and we are not going to process the invoices, we are going to impose the 10% penalty.
I don't understand the procurement rules at play here, Advocate Maloka. You'll clarify them for us. But you're saying that the legislature told the company to pay the workers and that they would then be reimbursed after the fact. Now, the company has told Newzroom Afrika that they obviously depend on money coming in to pay their workers. So it's impossible to pay if the company hasn't been paid, if that makes sense. Is this normal procurement process for a legislature to ask a company to pay the workers ahead of an invoice being settled by the legislature?
The issue is that we hold that December invoice because on the strength of the fact that on the 5th of December, remember we paid them for 2 months, October and November. And the reason being, there was a risk on our part if we paid Mafoko directly into their account. And therefore, for us to guarantee and protect the poor and the marginalized, those are the workers, we took a decision to say that we are not going to process the invoice until you make an undertaking that you have paid your workers.
But this is not a fly-by-night company. Advocate Maloka, if I might just interject there, this is not a company that's been around for 1 or 2 years. They've got a 21-year track record, right? So this is something you can track, whether they have put workers at risk in the past. So your decision to, as you say, protect workers in the event that the company doesn't pay them. My question to you was, is this a normal procurement process?
Remember, in terms of a procurement process, we pay after you have rendered the service.
Right.
Now, in this instance, Mafoko rendered a service. We paid them in December. Now, the second round, which is the last invoice, was the invoice of December. Now, in this instance, because of already we identified a risk of employees not being paid, and this is the last invoice that the contractor is having with the institution, we took a decision to say that we rather wait until these workers are paid their invoice their salaries for December, so that we can process that invoice. Or, like you're saying that this is not a fly-by-night company. It has been there for the last 20 years. It has been operating. But our concern, the risk that we've identified is the fact that if we immediately pay Mafoko directly into their account, then we'll have a challenge. But over and above that, we met with them on the 8th of January, last week, Thursday. We failed to enter into an agreement. We then offered them. We said to them, we're going to write a letter to your attorneys to pay this amount, the invoice for December, into a trust account of the attorneys, because the relationship of trust here is no longer there. So we'll rather pay this amount into a trust account of your attorneys, so that your attorneys can give us an undertaking that they will directly pay the employees. So now what happened is
Sorry, Advocate Maloka, let me just come in there. You say you identified a risk of employees not being paid. On what basis?
Yes.
On what basis was this? What was the information you had that told you there was a risk of employees not being paid?
The information is the report we got in December on the 16th, when you and I have our salaries to spend money with our families, to have a family time. Unfortunately, this company did not pay their their employees in December, despite the fact that we paid them in the 5th of December. Now, already it's a risk that we cannot continue. Remember, as the legislature, one of our roles is to be a guardian of the poor and the marginalized, the workers, or wherein they are not, workers' rights are not protected. Now, in this instance, I must confirm and indicate that we paid Mafoko in December, the 5th. Unfortunately, they failed to pay them. And that risk was reported to me on the 16th of December.
All right, so it's now the 12th of January. Surely by now, the legislature must settle that invoice.
What happened is that we received a letter from the attorneys on Friday morning to say that they've paid all their employees. What we did then is that we said, okay, it's fine. We want to make sure that all the employees were paid. The manager for security immediately verified with the employees. We found that only the employees that belong to Nedbank were paid. The other employees, their salaries were not into their account. This morning, I made another request to say that they must find and verify whether all the employees were paid. If we can confirm with the employees that they were paid, definitely by end of today, we'll pay that invoice.
All right. So onto this issue now. Mafoko security guards work at airports, hospitals, other critical sites that pose, some would say, a national security risk if they're not guarded. right? So you said that the contract with Mafoko Security Guards came to an end at the end of September last year, and a process to replace that company was underway. Where is that process at now, so that there is the seamless continuation of security at these national key points?
Yes, we immediately processed the tender process, and on the 1st of January, we appointed a new company, and I instructed my legal team to ensure that the service level agreement that we are going to enter into with this new company, we identify all the gaps that were in the Mafoko contract. And I must indicate and confirm that indeed the service level agreement is ready and will be signing by end of this week. And we have covered all the gaps to ensure that at the end of the day, we protect the workers.
All right, it does seem like a he said situation insofar as the payment of Mafoko Security Patrol is concerned, but we continue to track this story. Advocate Mpho Maloka is the Secretary of the Gauteng Provincial Legislature.